Welcome to Super Slick Surfaces number 2 and this edition of Overgaden Lectures. And because I think I was a little bit sloppy last time, I want to start with the thank yous immediately. So thank you all very, very much for coming. And let's get through these thank yous. I'm going to read this pretty much because there's so much I wanted to get off my chest. And I think the best way is if I just read it. So first of all, of course, I want to thank Bigruppen Foundation for making this possible, and also the Danish Arts Foundation and Olske Familienfond. Not least, Merete, who's the director of Overgaden, and Anna Holm, for inviting me and giving me the chance to invite all of these fantastic people here whom I have had very inspiring conversations with, or to whom I've simply listened to a lot in reading this very complex subject that we'll be addressing here. And last, oh, well, of course I want to thank the speakers also for coming and sharing their thoughts and ideas with us. And I will introduce them in a minute. I also want to thank Alexander for being so incredibly helpful with this, but also all of the Overgaden team. Toke, our technician here today, Trine, Anne, Kasper, Sitzel. So thanks to all of you. So with this, I should also mention that this is already the 4th year that these Overgaden lectures have been taking place. And as you know, this edition was dedicated to the idea of the post-internet, which is actually already fills me with a little bit of a strange sensation saying this word. I'll get into this a little bit later. The notion of post-internet and what impact the internet and social media have had on art so far. So how does art relate to the omnipresent virtual universe of the internet, and what issues, possibilities and strategies has this digital realm generated? So my key subjects: the materiality of the virtual. So what effect does the virtual have on the way we perceive material, or what materials generate the virtual experience? The erotic of the digital imagery, which I think is an incredible, exciting issue related to the idea of the image being something that is, the digital image being something that is weightless, wiped away, or appearing magically on these machines that we use every day. And of course, the third subject, the speed of digital communication, how this influences the way we read and process information, you know, just like spam, clickbait as two subjects here. As I said before, the question alone, you know, the possibilities and strategies of the digital realm, show that this conference was actually conceived in a different time. It appears like in a different universe. Though the world was different, the use and the intelligent use of, and you know, like of using social media and internet resources by the Trump team, this cannot go unmentioned, has been extremely successful in putting him in the position that he is in now. I think we'll hear more about that later from some of the speakers, I'm sure, because how this team has used Twitter, Facebook, and other tools to implement their strategies. We're certainly based on a clear understanding of phenomena like filter bubbles and echo chambers, and basically the manipulation to create powerful social media propaganda. One element that I also found out about only recently is called astroturfing. So it's about creating the illusion of being part of a major online movement and sharing an opinion with many. So we really need to acknowledge that this team has been remarkably successful in using social media. So what does that show us now? So what we just called the post-internet condition only a few weeks ago can now be regarded as, well, I wrote mainstream here, but that's obviously the wrong word, but I think we can just say the real, or in a sense, everything. So if I declared the last session as a question session, and this as the answer session, the answers, in a sense, have already been given by the facts. One of the speakers of last time, Boris Andreas, reminded me not to forget his questions. And if you were here, then I'm sure you'll remember that his first question was, are we fucked? And the second question was, are we fucked enough? So before I introduce the speakers with the answer to this question, let me try to at least attempt to wrap up the last session. And the contributions, of course, are online, and I would recommend having a look at them originally, so I don't claim to actually be able to wrap that up conclusively. So Toke Lückeberg gave an exciting overview of his work as a curator and connected some dots for many of us in showing how the beginnings of what was called post-internet not only has equivalent, but also roots, artists, and exhibitions in this town. So it's not something that just came from the outside. So it's also, Copenhagen also has also been a strong part in actually getting it out there. So he pointed out that unlike what he called the prevalent Platonic idealism in the art world, the artists of the post-internet generation were taking lifestyle seriously and engaging with it in concrete ways, thereby noting its sociological importance. Because, and that's a quote, if you want to influence people's behavior, you have to deal with lifestyle. I've already mentioned Boris Andreas, and in his litany on ether, yeah, well, I got to refrain myself with advertising to look at it, but it's, and I also have to resist throwing around sound bites because they're very sticky and alluring, and that's why I like them very much. But I'd rather want to challenge you to actually experience and follow his line of thinking along his ideas of a dichotomy of idealism and materialism in relation to the digital realm, and the questions relating the aesthetic affiliation of democratic values, which lead us to the importance of the realization of politics legitimized by votes based on what are primarily aesthetic decisions. So by populace, which is choosing on the basis of effects. And of course the role of the media landscape, which is reinforcing this notion. Émeric Monceau gave his presentation about rediscovering a sense of autonomy in publishing in the context of network practices in relation to the common practice of every day, where everyone publishes without thinking twice about the tools they're using and that these tools were designed by others, not only for publishing, but also, for example, for collecting user data. So reclaiming the whole environment and deciding on how and in which way to address a work to a viewer is the solution that he suggested in his talk. Because by networking standards, in a sense answering to Boris, we are fucked and the party is over. So the celebration of the internet revolution has created a self-inflicted trap, and the one way to get out of it is based on the effort to bring back radical politics in art practices. In a way, this actually echoes quite prominently the recent article by Simon Sheikh, which is called Art After Trump. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Picking up on these strategies, Alessandro Ludovico reflected on the idea of the spaceless book to overcome the limits of the printed space, and the ideas of how the dematerialization of the publication has blurred and finally led to the vanishing of its boundaries. So the infinite publication as a counter-idea to the web, which he described as an inconsistent agglomerate of information designed for endless consumption. So he suggests a practice of critical publishing that would include programming code and programming networks. The final contributor, Hannah Black, participated from Berlin, and by publishing a series of tweets on her Twitter account that could be followed here from the audience, reflecting on her own and very special relationship to this platform, including her protective, I'm quoting, protective mantra, "I'm only always really talking to myself." Apart from that, it was obviously like a very interesting collective experience about the idea of time that I mentioned before, the speed of internet communication, which should be, I think, also related to the subjective experience of time when you are, for example, desperately waiting for a text of a loved one, for example. So maybe that's just the romantic in me who wants to bring in the idea of love when we've been talking about fucking and fucking enough. So with this, I would like to move on to the speakers who will join us today. So let me very briefly introduce them. Our first speaker tonight will be Milena Hochsberg, who is a senior curator at Henny Onsted Kunstcenter, and is currently preparing her own take on this whole subject here for a show next year with ICA Philadelphia curator Alex Klein. It revolves around the idea of the virtual as a perceptual space, an expanded space not hinged, and I'm quoting again, on new technology per se, and connecting to how bodies position themselves in the real world with regard to race, gender, sexuality, and built architecture. My quotes, as you can tell, are obviously related, and this should be pointed out because no expenses have been. So we also produced this program, which also has like all of the abstracts of all of the speakers inside, and also a program so you know when there will be cake. Actually, it only says coffee, but I have secure information that eventually there will be cake. Okay. As we are talking of cake, no, it has nothing to do with cake. Okay, Tatjana. Tatjana Batzikeller is the is the artistic director of Disruption Lab, which is a platform of events and research focused on art, hacktivism, and disruption, to present and investigate new routes of social and political action. The basis of her presentation is actually a program that she ran there from June to November 2016, so it's just wrapping up now, called Art and Evidence, which was inspired by an exchange with the filmmaker and journalist Laura Poitras, whom I'm sure you know through her work with Edward Snowden. So she will introduce artistic explorations through which the issues of whistleblowing, leaking, disclosing, and knowledge production are investigated in their imaginative potential. One of the key questions: is it still possible to use technology and media as conscious tools for social change? And what can we offer as researchers and cultural producers, and how can we encourage the critical debate on social, political, and technological matters, as well as to generate experimental ways of thinking in the post-digital scenario? I've abbreviated that a lot. as I am going to do with Paul Feigelfeld, who is the next speaker, and still the academic coordinator of the Digital Cultures Research Lab at Leuphana University Lüneburg, and also one of the coordinators of the Refugee Phrase book. The Refugee Phrase book is something that I also urge you to look up. Are you going to talk about that as well? No. So then I should just mention that you might want to look that up and see. It's exactly what it says. It's a phrase book that translates important phrases that you might need as a refugee into different languages, and is actually a proper book that can be printed and given to refugees so they can actually articulate themselves. And you know, like you can actually, you're also very welcome to see if you want to maybe contribute to that, or just print it and hand it out to refugees who might need it. So Paul's talk is tentatively titled Optimal Brain Damage. So it's something, of course, that we all wish for. So it will start from the relation between the infrastructuralization of artificial intelligence techniques and the automation of capitalist processes and their cultural, philosophical, political, social, economic, and ecological entanglements. I'm so like, as there are so many entanglements, I wonder, is there one that I missed or that you are missing? But you know, like we'll point it out eventually. Maybe I'm wondering if I should stick to reading this because it's kind of it sounds like a little bit of bad homework of reminding speakers of what they said they would speak about, and I'd rather hear them themselves. But maybe just one thing about Paul's piece is that he said in an experimental finish, the psychoanalysis of Jacques Lacan and the heuristical methods of Facebook's AI guru Yann LeCun, is that the right way to pronounce it? Yann LeCun? Will be mirrored. So I'm actually extremely curious how that's going to turn out. I'm also extremely excited I'm sorry, I'm just like a very excited person, or excitable person, I guess. So I'm not only excited, but also thrilled to actually have Sandra Muchinga here, whom I guess many of you already know through her recent performance at X and Beyond. Sandra Muchinga is an artist and will talk about how the excerpt, the edit, and stored micro-impressions of moving images with sound can be seen as examples of a granularization of digital existence. Micro-impressions is a term coined by Abby Jacobson and Ilana Glazer from the TV comedy Broad City for their live skit featuring extremely condensed impressions of famous characters. So a performance that is particularly popular on common online comedy platforms. So she will address aspects of this interaction, but in particular focus on the question of how the concrete act of experiencing oral media and watching moving images affects our attention span. And with this, we come to Mohammed Salemi, who is an artist, curator, and author based in New York. And his new book is just out, and I'm extremely pleased to say that I think I'm the first person in Denmark who actually has gotten their hands on one. It's called For Machine Use Only, but I'm going to read it anyway. So his presentation is going to be called, After Post-Internet and the Winter of AI. Viewed from the inside of contemporary time and space, the internet paradigm, network, discourses, and computational logic appear as a series of theories and philosophies that model intelligence and the working of the cognitive, social, and political systems based on the mechanisms of computational hardware, software, and processes. That sounds like a tough one, but actually it's really It's a very simple observation, which boils down to the question, the first thing that I consciously remember Mohammed posting on Facebook was saying that there's a war going on between the digital and the virtual, and we are, of course, in its midst. So it's based on this idea of computationalism as a specific worldview, and one that is perhaps reaching its peak already, based on the widespread belief, and I'm quoting, that technological progress within the next decade will witness a setback, while new advancements will greatly slow down, if not altogether come to a halt. So it's a talk based on the political reality of our technology, which historically has placed most of, not all, of its developments amongst the arsenal of the rich and the powerful. And in his presentation, Mohammed announced he wants to speculate on the possibilities of technology and chart a way in which culture in general and art in particular can help to overcome the post-internet and the winter of artificial intelligence. Can art and culture do their part in facilitating the necessary shift that can free our imagination and machines from their philosophical, scientific, political, and cultural limitations? So this question is actually pretty much nearly directly, or could be directly addressed to Mathilde Schütz-Marwitt, who I'm very happy is joining us, who is a creative producer and strategist with the media company House of Real, and as the former head of digital production of SMAK here in Copenhagen, will talk about the digital mindset and application and implementation of these ideas that we are addressing here today. So now you know.